the idea of timely resistance and untimely resistance, there are certainly time boxes in change, and you can describe it also as convergent and divergent thinking. At the start of the change, the gates are open for collaboration and design and shaping what the change will be. And the collaboration process is that, and that can be, you can almost design concentric circles leading out of the main concept of change. And there's a conscious effort to go out further to the edges of your stakeholder system and bring those outside voices in. And when resistance is met, there can be many reasons for that. And when that convergent time box is still open, I call that timely resistance. It's the resistance that you can do something about. Yeah. It's the resistance that can be explored and mined for its gold. And that resistance says, oh, you can't do things this way because X, Y, and Z, or you've forgotten this, you've forgotten that. And if you take a look at it, they've usually got a good point.
Yes.
On the flip side, moving further down into a change, when you get to the point of implementation, untimely resistance, because projects are costed, they've got people working on them, they're working to a scope, and they're project managed as they ought to be. Untimely resistance towards the end of a change has cost associated with it.
Welcome to episode 44 of the Inner Game of Change podcast, where I focus on exploring the multi-layers of managing and enabling organizational change. My name is Ali Jama, and this is the Inner Game of Change podcast. Today, my guest is Naomi Jones-Black, an author, a change management expert, and a great human. Naomi's recent book is The Power of People Collaborating: Change Management Perspectives. A firm believer in the power of collaboration, Naomi is dedicated to sharing her knowledge and experience in organizational change management. Her passion lies in helping organizations become more effective at designing, implementing, and managing change. In this episode, Naomi and I discuss her book and delve into the power of collaboration and the role it plays in driving positive change in the workplace. I am grateful to have Naomi sharing her thoughts with me today. Naomi, thank you very much for your time and welcome to the Inner Game of Change podcast. Very happy to have you on board.
It's wonderful that you have invited me in. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Today I want to talk about your book. It's a collaborative piece of work around collaboration. But before we start on this topic, Naomi, it would be great for my listeners to know a little bit about you and who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thank you. So by way of background, in 2022, I launched a company called CMO1. It's a change management advisory service. And that is to realize a vision that I have. And what I do in that is I aim to skillfully create, curate, and distribute content to build change capability for people and organizations to become excellent change makers. In that, I believe in the power of collaboration. Obviously, it's the title of this new book that we've released. And I am passionate and keen on imparting knowledge and experience in organizational change management so that organizations can become better at designing, implementing, and managing change. What I do, I'm an accredited change manager master and a change management practitioner, and I hold a Master of Business, Graduate Diploma in Management, and a Bachelor of Commerce. I'm also a people manager, and I manage change team and have managed change teams for some time now. And I've been responsible for enterprise-wide change frameworks, and I've worked in many different settings in business, procurement, finance, HR. So very focused on the workplace and organizations. So that's probably enough about me.
Where did you have the time to do all of those things?
Well, that's been a career over almost 15 years as a change practitioner.
Wonderful.
So,
yeah. Well done.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your book. The book is called actually The Power of People Collaborating. It's from a change management perspective. Yep. And I actually like the word collaborating, and so there's an action orientation in there. So talk to us. What drove you to? Usually, books are they are ideas that mature until they've got no place to go, and therefore the author would need to put that in writing. Is that what it is?
Well, kind of. There's two motivations around it. And to get to the motivations, I'll tell you a little bit about the book itself.
Sure.
So The Power of People Collaborating is a collaboration in and of itself. And to develop it, I invited 5 collaborators to share their views on this fundamental practice of organizational change management that's embedded within our practice, which is collaboration. And the book was designed as a conversation about collaboration from the perspective of organizational change management. And I really see that collaboration is the action of people working together as excellent change makers. So that's the context of where I was coming from. So I gathered these 5 other writers to work with me on the book, and I gave them a brief and a theme and a starter chapter. And their task then was that they needed to write something that reflected the theme and reflected that starter chapter. So in the book, we have readers will hear from experienced and respected change professionals, from change management specialists through to change directors. And we are a group of 6 writers with a big vision and big dreams. And as I say in the book, I am a believer in what Margaret Mead has said when she said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, because indeed that is the only thing that ever has.
Yeah, so I hope you change our world, and definitely you changed mine. I was particularly interested in the neuroscience behind it. But I think before we talk more about this, I think it's worthwhile to mention that the other collaborators with you, Sarah Wilcox, Mal Anderson, Sian Rinaldi, Zenobia Ali, and Gordon Brockway. Have I missed anybody else?
No, that's it. And that, when I said there were 2 key drivers as to what drove me to write this book. First of all, and the second one involves all of those writers, and I'll get to that in a sec.
Sure.
The first one, it was out of frustration. I know that is a common reason that people write books. At the time, I was working with a project that had 10,000 stakeholders, and when I first arrived, the engagement with stakeholders looked like the vendor chucking a request for input over the fence to the project, and the project scrambling with its stakeholder groups to get groups of people together with 2 weeks notice to make decisions and define requirements. And I'm like, nah, that's not how you do it. To me, you need a plan, and that planning takes time, and you need the people on board who are going to do that planning, which is often the change specialists, who can consider the stakeholders early enough in the project. So there's another frustration in there for me that's about change management officers and project management officers working together in a change. And look, that's probably another book that's in me as well, down the track. And I'm doing some work in that area in my own business practice. Yeah. But the second reason is that I wrote this book or compiled it, drove it, is that I came across some people, change practitioners, who inspired me and who I wanted to work with. And I'm a bit of a bringer together of people, a bit of a community builder. Yep. And just going through all those writers, Gordon Brockway was my mentor in the Change Management Institute's national mentoring program that used to be run. He's based in WA. It was a great program, and he helped me see the value of my work, which helped me to transition into bigger and more complex change programs. And the chapter that he has in our book is like a change playbook. that any practitioner could pick up and run with like a methodology and win at change. And he gives a 6-step change process, and what he's delivered is a generous amount of value in our book. And then we get to Sarah Wilcox. Her perspective was unique to me. She's a fiery Pakana woman from the northwest of Lutruwita, Tasmania. Mm. And as a Tasmanian Aboriginal, she's a specialist who advises on all aspects of stakeholder engagement for Aboriginal engagement. And I met her when I did a presentation for the Tasmanian Training Consortium, which is effectively the training arm for the Tasmanian State Service. And I was talking about busting myths of change management, and she connected with me, and I ended up working with her husband down the track, who is a talented app developer. What she brought to the book is that she illustrates the benefit of empowering diversity within engagement and change programs. She says that it's proven that diversity helps to make better decisions and enhances workplace culture, safety and success. And within her article, Change and Engagement Practitioners, we find some really useful references and tools and principles to guide cultural engagement. Wonderful. And then there's Zenobia Ali.
Yeah.
I had to have her in this project because she was the first permanent change management person in the Tasmanian State Service. I'm based in Hobart. We're on a leadership committee together for the Tasmanian State Service Organisational Change Community of Practice, of which I'm the chair. She has deep skills from 25 years in change, and I've always appreciated her advice and guidance. Her article challenges us all about the business jargon that we use. I think what she's saying is that we really need to be measured by the results and outcomes we are getting in change and leave the frameworks behind. And that is contentious, I know, but I didn't mind a bit of contention in the book, which leads us to Mal Anderson. I met him on a webinar when I was facilitating with the Change Management Institute's Accredited Change Manager Masters. And when I heard him say that he worked on his first change program in the late 1970s, I knew I had to connect with him. That absolutely fascinated me. I'm quite a curious person like yourself, Ali. And Mal's contention was that in a more complex and uncertain world, to survive disruption and be disrupted themselves, organisations need to be more adaptive. It's still a conversation, and he says that can only be done with greater trust and collaboration and a change profession that steps up to help people and organisations to get there. And of course,
so you go.
I can't forget Sian. She and I met through the Change Management Institute again. And look, this is evidence of getting involved in volunteering that can have a lot of spin-off benefits. At the time, I was leading the CMI chapter in Tassie, and she had joined the National CMI board at the governance level. And she writes in our book, she writes about her experience on a board and provides some great insights into that experience, and particularly one when she realised that she was wrong about something. And it takes a great person to admit that, right?
Absolutely.
And she demonstrated great character there, no ego. That's how we got there. It was through frustration. That was a very long story, I realised. Through frustration and also through inspiration, with looking around and going, wow, there's some amazing people here and amazing perspectives with a lot to share. I feel like we've really brought it together in this book. It absolutely exceeded my expectations in terms of what everyone brought to it.
Yeah, well, congratulations. And you practiced where you preached around collaboration in there. When we have ideas and experiences, it is a different game when you sit and you want to write about them. It's because you want to put your thoughts together. You're going to be far more responsible about the word you're going to write. And you probably will be pushed to, to validate all of your ideas as well, like what you did and your references. So writing it takes information to a different level. And you probably, all of those, co-authors with you, they've probably walked away their original ideas probably were formed differently after they've written their pieces as well. So certainly you're not the same person that was before you wrote your book.
What a wonderful reflection, and so true. And even the likes of Mal Anderson, he's up to like his fifth book by now. He goes really deep, and just the models that he's put forward in this book are really unique, and some of his best work, he's thought it through, and he's got some, amazing ideas. But what a great reflection. I feel that's true. I have really clarified what I mean around collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I want to ask you a very quick question, or general question is, why collaborate anyway? And is collaboration, whilst we talk about it, well, first of all, is it an easy thing, Naomi?
Well, I don't always think it is an easy thing, which is why I think there are some prerequisites that you need to really have in place. And some of the things I consider are really understanding your stakeholder groups and having a willingness to want to collaborate. And that can be on all sides of the fence. Hopefully there's not fences there. There's a nice big open field, but sometimes there are.
Yeah.
And from a project that has been tasked with implementing a change, and from the groups who are impacted as well. It's one of the tenets in conflict management that people, to resolve conflict, need to want to resolve conflict. It's similar with collaboration. And there might also need to be an education process within projects or even within business units in organisations as to why collaborations need to be designed in a more formal sense, particularly when you're looking at complex change.
Yeah. I often go to, the reason why I ask whether it's actually difficult or easy, the workplace nowadays got no shortage of cynics. So sometimes people will come to those collaboration sessions and they just sit idle, and the idea is that you don't come to a collaboration session just to sit idle. You're going to have to have an input into it. I remember one leader one day said to me, if you're going to show up to this meeting, you have to have an input and contribute, otherwise don't show up.
Fair enough.
And then I always think about that when it comes to collaboration. How do you feel about, because sometimes we bring a group of people, diverse people, from different backgrounds, different departments, especially in a workplace, in the aim to solve a problem or create a solution or come up with ideas. How do you feel about getting them together? And at the same time, we put rules around how we would like them to engage. So I find that really sometimes, if it's not managed well, we shoot ourselves in the foot. On the one hand, we're asking people to be creative, which means let me be creative, less rules. On the other hand, we create some ground rules for them to play by. Are these ground rules driven because we don't have an unlimited amount of time? Is that because we would like them to focus on a particular topic? How do we marry the two?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. There's something around in creative processes that do still require process. I worked in the professional performing arts for 10 years before this career. And during that time, I got to observe the creative process of choreographers and their development process on how to go from an idea through to a performance that says something. It's a process. It's still this step, then this step, then this step, and the steps can be methods. It's not unlike how we design facilitation. We've got methods. We design for creativity to come through.
Yep.
But still, it reminds me there's this old proverb that says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. And what we know is that people support what they have a hand in creating. There should be less resistance at the end of a project or end of when a change is implemented, because factors have been included in the design that will make that end outcome more suitable when it's implemented, because you've had that counsel. But there's something, you talk about diversity, and there's something about collaborative events that is often overlooked as a benefit from my observation. And that's when people get to know each other.
Yeah.
The time they spend together, they bond. We talk about there might be barriers on a diversity side, but there's barriers even on a business function side. Like even one end of a system has never talked to one other end of the system, and they've got dependencies on each other.
Yes. Yeah.
In terms of the actual work they need to do.
Yeah.
When they come together, we create that space, and these groups of people can become community. They can become known to each other, and trust is built. And we know that it's much easier to ask something from someone when you already know them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And look, I notice, first of all, action is the best starting point to get people to know each other. So a theory, sitting in a lecture, talking to me about how we need to create a solution, get me to work on it. And through that working, in fact, I think the Latin word has got work or labor in the heart of it, the original word of collaboration, which is,
really?
which is people working together. It's actually the word work, meaning you come to collaboration to work.
Yes, yes.
And I noticed that in kids, a group of people, and I've seen that with my son, and they don't know each other. And obviously teenagers, they are in their own world. They feel shy about saying hello to anybody. But the moment you throw something, in there and you get them to work, and all of a sudden conversations start flowing. They don't know each other, but through the work, we're actually harnessing their energies towards a particular problem. And when you mentioned mentioned the silos, I always say almost all business units have the same dragon to deal with, same monsters, efficiencies, manual work. And so if we get them together, not only are we going to achieve that, and it can actually save cost to the business, because instead of creating 3-4 solutions, you might create one that will help everybody. I will walk away far more engaged. And if that happens, from a neuroscience perspective, some of us, not all of us, but some of us will get a bit of a rush of an oxytocin. And if we come up with a solution that everybody agrees with, or an idea, definitely we're going to get some dopamine in there. That's an achievement. And that sort of helps. Now, I'm not a specialist in collaboration, but I'd like to think that when you achieve something out of collaboration, that's one thing that you're going to walk away with, is that I am likely more engaged than when the meeting or the collaboration session started. Am I on the right track?
Oh, absolutely. And it was interesting to hear you say the root of the word collaboration has got work in it, because that was my natural definition, that it's the action of people working together as excellent change makers.
Yes.
And in the book, from a neuroscience point of view, I cite some research that shows what lights up in the brain when we relate to other. In the lower part of the brain, it lights up when we have a concept of them, those ones who are not us.
Yes.
And when we have the concept of us, it lights up in the prefrontal cortex, which is the higher functioning brain. I just find that so fascinating. And you talk about that designing in dopamine hits for people, and of course you've got all the behavioural economic side of things with nudges, etc.
One important thing that actually people can get away with is actually the level of trust will certainly move in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Working together.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it won't be 100% trust, but if you reiterate and repeat those conversations, they can happen. I want to ask you a technical sort of a question. When would collaboration, for a change manager or change practitioner, when would collaboration sessions or workshops, when are they best utilized? At the start, in the middle, at the end?
I believe it's when is that is the question to ask. When do we need input? Yes. And it's a matter of defining what the collaboration is for. What is its purpose? Is it upfront to design and define requirements? that would then go into a design process.
Yeah.
Is it input into actual design of business processes or systems, or is it a input into understanding the change impacts and therefore understanding, helping groups and business units to land and understand what they need to do to prepare for the change that might not be in the scope of a project or a core scope of a project. So it very much depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. I've seen them work really well in the design stage because that's a very contentious period. Everybody wants their own piece. And I've also seen it working before the delivery or during the delivery or even at the end when you review success, because especially that reviewing of success at the end, that's when the dopamine hits, is saying, I've been part of this group that we got this up and going.
Yeah,
and so that it's really very powerful. I want to ask you, some organizations can come across, when I say organizations, I'm talking about managers in organizations, can come across sometimes, Naomi, why would you complicate it? We're just going to go with this design and let's just do it.
Yeah.
What's the fallout from this approach?
Well, sometimes you have drivers inside an organization where a conclusion by a small group of people has been made, all right, here's our problem, this is what we're going to do to solve it. They've got a fixed way of doing things.
Yeah.
And the idea of opening that out and having that challenged could cause their idea to have to change. And that can feel a bit threatening. It's kind of the sunk cost bias.
Yes.
That can mean people have been working on a change for some time and they get fixed on what the change is going to be. So let me give you an arts example. I'm in a band and my creative partner writes songs, and he came up with one recently, which is a lovely tune. And my role in the band is to write lyrics. So I had the tune in my head for days and I was starting to sense the edges of what the words and lyrics might be.
Yeah.
And then he started to sing words to the song. And I heard them so much that the ideas of the possibilities of what those words could be flew away. And I couldn't hear beyond what his words had locked it into.
Mm.
It's kind of the leaders in organizations can see the possibilities of change and have made a decision already, whether they've expressed that openly to say, I have made a decision, or whether it's something subconscious that they go, right, it's going to be like this. Some believe that in terms of objections for collaboration, people believe it takes too long to consult.
Yeah. And
that does become true when the landscape of your stakeholders hasn't been understood and the time frames haven't been sufficiently scoped in response to the complexity you're seeing in your stakeholder landscape. But thoughtful design of collaboration activities overcomes the problem of an elongated committee process with endless discussion and no decision. Some say the change leaders are too busy to initiate collaboration. But at that point, really collaboration in their mind becomes too hard, but it doesn't get prioritized and scoped. And that means all the benefits and value of collaboration get left on the table. It does take time. There's no two ways about it. It takes time to collaborate.
It takes time and effort as well. Look, they can, I've seen organizations doing it. And as you mentioned, there's always the fallout will be extended timeline, defects, business units that we forgot about, interdependencies, all of those things. And that's where a diverse group of people from different business units, different backgrounds, they bring different layers to look at the problem. But I'm seeing more and more organizations really do focus. You did bring up the idea of music. I think music industry is very well known for collaboration anyway.
Yes.
And I wish we learn a lot from it. There's an analogy in my head, which is if you're in a restaurant, we almost like in a food preparation session, or setting. There are two ways to prepare the meal. There's one where you're sitting as a customer and I bring you a fully made cake. And Naomi, you have to eat it. That's it. I've made it. I've made a decision on the design and everything. Or the other approach is that I take the customers, the clients, with me to the kitchen. I show them the ingredients, and I say to them, let's work together towards making a cake. So not only they're going to be engaged in the activity, but we might reach to the same conclusion probably. But that act itself is far more important. And instead of later somebody will be saying, oh, that was really bad, or I didn't like it, they are already part of the solution when you bring them to their kitchen. And by the way, there's a reason why restaurants nowadays have opened the kitchen window so you can see people in the kitchen. One of the reasons they did that is this is a virtual engagement. I can see I am part of the action. So that's actually a subtle way to collaborate, even by just looking and admiring what they're actually doing. So they might have other reasons, but for me, that's how I look at it anyway.
And I love the analogy, Ali. And, it's in an organizational setting. It's about the risk that exists in and around that change. You see that the drivers of the change, some believe that they know better than those who are impacted. And to me, that shows all sorts of arrogance. And I've heard with and worked with PMs who don't even want a change manager to talk to stakeholders. And that's beyond belief. And from that, I've gained that personal commitment to helping project managers and change managers work together because they have so much to gain from each other's practice. And that cake analogy, it's like saying to stakeholders, oh, you don't know what you want, you need to be told.
Absolutely.
Well, no, if you're the ultimate owner of the risk that you introduce to the business unit or the organization, then you shouldn't be the decision maker of what that cake's going to be. Sometimes projects overstep their brief and their accountabilities. But what happens when the stakeholders are unfamiliar to us? Sarah Wilcock in our book acknowledged that influencing leaders and advocating for underrepresented voices not present on leadership teams is a challenge. She's acknowledging that, but she says that through planning and will and intent that it can be done and it should be done because it's the right thing to do.
Yes, yeah. And in your book you mentioned something around timely versus untimely resistance. Do you want to share with me what you mean by that? Yeah,
it's a fairly simple concept. It's in the opening chapter of the book, and I explain what those concepts mean for organizations. So the idea of timely resistance and untimely resistance, there are certainly time boxes in change, and you can describe it also as convergent and divergent thinking. At the start of the change, the gates are open for collaboration and design and shaping what the change will be. And the collaboration process is that, and that can be the design process.
Yeah.
You can almost design concentric circles leading out of the main concept of change. And there's a conscious effort to go out further to the edges of your stakeholder system and bring those outside voices in. And when resistance is met, there can be many reasons for that. And when that convergent time box is still open, I call that timely resistance. It's the resistance that you can do something about. Yeah. It's the resistance that can be explored and mined for its gold. And that resistance says, oh, you can't do things this way because X, Y, and Z, or you've forgotten this, you've forgotten that. And if you take a look at it, they've usually got a good point.
Yes. Yeah.
And it might mean that you've hit your system of change has hit on another system and will cause flow-on effects of change. But then it's the case that you might be talking business readiness activities with that business area.
Yeah.
And I define business readiness as anything a business unit or organisation needs to do to prepare themselves for the change that's coming that's not in the scope of the project to deliver. Or in that scenario, you might then need to go back and change the design of the change that you're working on based on the feedback that was contained within that resistance. On the flip side, moving further down into a change when you get to the point of implementation, untimely resistance because projects are costed, they've got people working on them. They're working to a scope and they're project managed as they ought to be. Untimely resistance towards the end of a change has cost associated with it. So as we know in change management, the effort's up front. Yep. If you don't take the time to analyse the change, analyse your stakeholders and plan your engagements, plan your collaboration up front, yep. You'll be forced at the end of your change to fix up, to rework, start again.
There'll be lots of backpedaling and clunkiness. Yeah.
Yeah, and what that does to engagement of our
So the timely resistance, that's a pure lack of information or a picture that is not 360 view of a solution.
It's in my mind. It's you're starting to go out and talk about the change, and you're presenting it to people, and you're saying, "Here's what it is," You might be encountering groups that you didn't initially, anticipate, and then you're getting resistance. And it's good. It's good because it gives you information that helps make the change better.
And that's where when we switch on our highest level of curiosity, that's where the stage is. Yeah. Because we gotta have to admit to ourselves, even the project managers, that you'll have to go with the assumption that you only know half of the story. If you end up validating that you knew the whole story, power to you. But I haven't seen that scenario yet. And so the timely is probably a good thing. And I always say, of course, I need to ask questions. Of course, I might throw curlies at you in the initial design because, and that I consider the timely resistance as part of the engagement. I'd rather have somebody showing me timely resistance at the start, and I need to listen to that because, and usually those people become your allies and advocates later because you've engaged with them, you listen to them. Right. But I like how you put the two together. We are in the hybrid time, working from home and on site. Is it better to collaborate now? Is it the same, different ways, different times, different mechanisms?
You're absolutely right. We are in hybrid times, and it is a challenge, and it's a conversation that's still continuing. And it's more so for people who are new to organisations and haven't had that face-to-face interaction up front. I think.
Yeah.
The hybrid model means that our collaboration design needs to be flexible and incorporate the hybrid working. Me personally, I'm a big believer in one online, all online, when conducting an intentional collaboration where ideas are being workshopped and input is being recorded.
Yeah.
And that's where our collaboration tools have just, come into their own, like Miro and Trello, very, very useful.
Yeah.
For the book Power of People Collaborating, we used a Trello board, and that was great for communicating progress. I set up a schedule that led up to the release date, and we used that to communicate with each other. That was a really good hybrid way of working. And we had all met in a meeting. We were all over the country, from Sydney to WA to Canberra to Hobart. There was the trust element there as well, because myself, as the coordinator, I knew everyone, so I introduced everyone. It's absolutely possible these days, working in the hybrid environment, to get fantastic results out of collaboration.
I think so. I think so. Yeah. I think technology has come a long way to actually enable that, and there's always an opportunity in any situation. And I thought COVID, as horrible as time as it was, there were unintended positive consequences. The way we look at the workplace, our hybrid tools, technology, all of that is actually accelerated during that particular time. So we should really use that. And for me, collaboration is collaboration, different mode, online, face-to-face. The objective should not really change, which is what you talk about in the book. We are coming to the end of the podcast. I'm thoroughly enjoying this. I actually look forward to your next book, but whatever that will be. I usually ask my guests, Naomi, what would be your piece of advice to the change practice community?
Yeah, absolutely. The piece of advice from all 6 writers out of The Power of People Collaborating was to take the time to do the design work. And that means finding out who your stakeholders are, where they're coming from, how the change impacts them both negatively and positively, and also being clear on the collaboration task that you're doing is useful. Is it as we mentioned, is it a collaboration to build design requirements? Is it to consult on union HR or work health safety, even, impacts? And I think advice I would give is to have a go at creating formal mechanisms for engagement.
Yes.
and map out the steps that are involved and make them clear, because sometimes I think that projects and organizations don't fully appreciate what's involved to get to a point where you're in a workshop with stakeholders, and to get the best out of that and to make the most of everybody's time while building trust, while building long-term value into the outputs that are going to be delivered. And I give an example in the book, actually. On the very last page, I've included what I call an engagement request.
Yep.
And it's a mechanism that I came up with for the engagement of those 10,000 stakeholders.
Wonderful. We're going to put all of that in the podcast details, Naomi. And just remember also, I want to add to that, sometimes some change practitioners don't have the presentation skills or the confidence. And I always say that's fine. You can tap into somebody else who can do that, and you can still organize a collaboration. You don't need to be at the front of it, but you will be interested in the objective and the outcome of it. And so utilize your resources, and there's always somebody who is good at something, and then that's when you tap into that talent. How would employers and listeners reach out to you? And most importantly, where would they get a copy of your book?
Well, we'd love to get this book into the hands as many people as possible. The topic of collaboration is still a live one, and the ways to design good collaboration are many and varied. And we'd really love to see more collaboration designers out there.
Yes.
That are really, putting their thought to that particular challenge, because the benefits of collaboration are just incredible.
Wonderful.
So the way that they can get the book is on my website, which is cmo-.com, and it has an official book page that takes you to the different formats depending on what people refer. So that's CMO- and then the numeral 1.com.
And we're going to put that information anyway, and the link for your book in the podcast, Naomi. It's been a pleasure having you in my podcast, The Inner Game of Change. Another guest, another great idea, another great conversation. I hope to get you back at some stage in the future, and we talk about collaboration from a different angle, or perhaps a new book for you. But congratulations, and congratulations to the rest of the crew in your co-authors group. I really liked it, and I've taken quite a few points from it. And I encourage anybody listening to this to get a copy of this. It's an ebook. And so it's really easy to download instantly, and give it a go. Until next time, Naomi, be well and stay well.
Thanks, Ali.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. To know more about my guests and this podcast, check the innergameofchange.com.au website. And remember, subscribe. I can't wait to share with you my next podcast. Until then, stay well and stay safe.